Welcome. Good evening. All right. We'll call the meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. Katie will take roll.
Aaron Boltma. Here. Catherine Layton. Here. Yvonne Cudney. Here. Jason Cloutier.
Here.
Charlene Weir. Hayden Pendergrass.
Here.
And Marie St. Peter.
Any amendments? Thank you. Any amendments or additions to the agenda?
I want to bring up that I did mention a community tool shed, but it wasn't voted on. So I just want to bring that back up again during the community benefits section, but just wanted to note it that I thought we voted on it, but we didn't. So I just wanted to bring that up. Other than that, I don't have any revisions.
Thank you. And not seeing any. I move to approve agenda as stands.
Seconded. Or do you want a motion from
Motion.
I so move.
I second.
Awesome. Next item on the agenda is public comment. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak, you'll have 3 minutes and we'll go by raise of hands. Brian.
Hey everyone. Hi. Oh God, I'm so sorry. How's it going? Thank you all again for all your work in this project. It continues to be inspirational. And I hope we can in the city view this project as a good sign for the continuation of the CBO going forward. The couple things I wanted to mention. First, I think I want to make sure that during negotiations we're clear about the future residents of this property's AMI. There's both the distinction between county median income, which is what's reported, and city median income. But on top of that, I think I want to be extra clear that we should be considering potential vouchers that future residents will have when we're thinking about what those levels are. So, there were some statements in the last meeting using the non-voucher amount of Avalon residents as some sort of indicator. And I want to be clear that for Avalon, the purchasing power of said residents will likely include vouchers. That's the first thing. The other thing is I want to reiterate something that folks were saying last time, which is that the city is in the middle of a sort of boiling over of the houseless crisis. And currently we are bringing the city and the county a slate of demands primarily to build shelter now, to house the people that need it or to have them find homes the way they need it. I think it would be extremely wise for this negotiation to include some guarantee from Avalon to the community in that measure. And we had sort of left the meeting last time with some question marks in that regard. And I do think that concrete amount of money from Avalon going towards a down payment of a future property could be a simple solution to that for now, since we don't know how that's going to look. If, for instance, let's say $500,000 or $250,000 was guaranteed from Avalon to this project, likely in the form of a down payment, that could also then be sort of translated. Let's say we end up using a city property for the shelter. That could be translated into the same amount of money being used to sustain the project in other ways if a down payment isn't needed. So there's that. And then I think we can still do some work on the AMI stuff, making sure that affordability is at the forefront. I think this will be very wise move of inclusion also on the part of Avalon, who I assume, has interest in this project being supported continually by the community. And I think that could be an oversight that might lose that support if the down payment or other money was not included. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to make comment tonight?
Is there anyone online that would like to make public comment? Please raise your hand.
Any hands raised?
I don't see any. Go ahead.
Okay, awesome. Next item is approval of the minutes from the meeting from last week, the 6th. So those are attached to the packet as well. Any amendments or corrections to the minutes as presented?
I would note, I could be wrong, but as far as the benefit, our discussion of the community benefits, I think that number 3, Avalon would lose the pilot for an individual unit if the tenant has a higher income than 60%. I think it's for the tax year, not for the calendar year. Am I?
It's the same.
Okay. Okay, great. Then.
So you're good with keeping it?
I'm good with keeping
calendar.
it.
Okay.
My comment earlier about the community tool shed, apologies. That was in relation to this part of the agenda. So that's not on here, but we'll bring up that later on. I was gonna ask something about, I know that y'all meant the number 1 regarding the housing for seniors, prioritizing them. I was doing a little bit of a history dive, and the majority of this property for like years was going to be a senior housing or like be used for senior housing after it was burned down in 2017. So I was wondering if that's still what was decided on that, because I couldn't really tell by the language. So I just wanted to see if they would be prioritized or if they wouldn't. I just wasn't sure.
I recall we had concluded that it could be affirmatively marketed, but they could not be prioritized under the federal rules or blah, blah, blah. That's why the affirmative market language is in number 1, whereas in number 2, we have affirmatively market and prioritize previously incarcerated. That's what I recall.
Because the number 2 could be going towards CHIP lists, right, and the number 1 can't because it's not the whole property won't be senior residents, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And then affirmatively marketing, what does that look like again? Just because I really don't know. Is that just like sorry, could you just explain what that is?
Yeah, it's where do you advertise? Where do you put flyers? Where do you send your emails to? What service agencies do you reach out?
Okay.
Making sure that
publication.
Okay. Okay.
And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that matters for this portion, but if I recall correctly, the affirmatively market language came from the idea that you'd enter a property manager agreement and include that in there or something like that. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, there is literally well, let me be careful here because MSHDA has its document called an affirmative fair housing marketing plan.
Okay.
I don't know if they will let us add seniors to this because they have their own ways they go about determining that. But this is actually, if you don't look at the minutes, but if you look at the document, you'll see there's language.
There's already some changes after the lawyers did things.
with the
I
little
see.
typo thing. So I don't know if you want to
Yeah, so I guess the
put this
Minutes,
on
yeah.
hold and then. when
the
we
minutes
talk
just
about-
recap what you discussed, and then we'll go into the next
Got it.
page, which has the draft agreement. Or not draft, the draft benefits that were discussed at the last meeting last week.
We just need a motion to approve.
Oh, motion to approve the minutes from last week.
Second.
Agree. or
All in
aye.
favor? Any opposed? Okay, now we're getting into the next page of the packet, which would be the community benefits. This first item on here, recap of, is that something that we really need
We
to
weren't sure if we would have the agreement to
at the
review.
time, but we do. So
Right.
we're okay.
So we can-
So you can probably disregard letter A. That was kind of a fill-in.
All right, now that we're talking about community benefits. So I actually had one question before we jump into the actual bullet points. Looking at the previous agreements that were given to us, there's, a lot more contract language than what is provided in this draft. I assume things like notice, is this the complete agreement? Blah, blah, blah. That will all be added by the city attorney.
Yeah, this is just the draft point of the benefits that were approved by the committee at the last meeting. There's still going to be more content that has to be filled into this,
Okay.
but they haven't had time to have that added.
I see. So this is like the substance, the heart
Basically, yes.
contract.
Yep.
Is this where are we talking about benefits right now?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So I moved to Ypsi in 2017, so I wasn't entirely aware of the local politics or things going on the ground because I was new. But I recently came across this really cool, I guess, report and recommendations created by the Citizen Committee on Housing Affordability and Accessibility. And that was created through the Planning Commission in 2017. And then they had this report published in July or sent to the Planning Commission for council to review and add to the 2013 master plan. And in there were 11 really amazing recommendations that I feel like would be really beneficial to bring up and talk about as it relates to here as well. As possible benefits, like the Tenant Right of First Refusal Act. I feel like y'all would actually really love this because of the mission and stuff, but it's enacting this ordinance could mandate that tenants receive advance notice when their landlord intends to sell the property and have the opportunity to purchase the property before it is offered for sale to outside buyers. So I'm wondering if in 50 years when if Avalon doesn't want this property anymore, and could that be something that council, I know that this is a great ordinance meeting for us to come up with things for Avalon to agree to. And I can't imagine Avalon being in opposition of an ordinance that's for tenants, but I also know that that's not on y'all and that's more of a city thing. So I was wondering if that's something that, because I know that on our ordinance, the purpose of this is for the city to also agree to things and the developer to agree to things to enhance public support. And one of the, I know I'm not expecting Avalon to be like the homeless shelter provider because that's out of scope. I'm well aware of that. But one of the recommendations in this strategies in this report was to construct or establish an overnight shelter in Ypsi. And this was in 2020 that was formed after a study of 2 or so years in 2017. So
Is this
yes, it's
like Google?
yeah, let me send, yeah. Oh, here.
Reread the title.
Yep, I'll read the title really fast. Let me just pull it up here. It's called Master Plan, Housing Affordability and Access Committee, Subcommittee from City of Ypsi. And then that should take you to the actual link. It's a 76-page report. But my question is, could we bring that committee back up again? Could we make that committee a established committee? Is that, and Avalon has a partnership in that, and Avalon has a place in that, since y'all are the experts on housing first models. And I think that I'm personally passionate about ending mass incarceration, and I know that that's can be met through a housing first model. A lot of the issues we're facing in our community can be met with the housing first model. So is it possible that Avalon could support that being a possible agreement for council to then vote on? And yeah, please jump in.
I mean, frankly, I don't think we need to pass an ordinance to include that language in this agreement. We can just say tenants shall have the right to do this, just as in this document. Obviously, it won't apply to everywhere.
But that as simple as that.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know.
This is why I bring things up, because I need to lean on my colleagues. I have literally
I think that would fall within the scope of our mandate.
Did you find it?
Yes.
It's page 5.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring that up because I know that some of these will need to be conversations for council on a longer term, but wanting to just bring that up as a potential option of like having a committee again, like reestablishing an affordability and accessibility housing committee, redoing a study, because I'm sure those numbers are outdated and could be relooked at, and Avalon take part in that as a community organization. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here.
A lot of this, I think, is outside the scope of what we could do here. But the tenant right of first refusal, I think, would be something that could be worked into the community benefits agreement.
I would agree. What other parts would be out of scope in your opinion?
I don't think they can enact a just cause ordinance. I think that's a city council thing.
Right. No, that.
But we could say any evictions have to be for just cause.
And then we have to define.
Well, okay. Yeah. Such as failure to pay rent or violation of lease terms. Sorry, yeah. I guess that's already part of it, but
yeah.
I don't expect this community benefits agreement is not going to solve the housing issues and are plaguing our communities. Like, let's just be like, hopefully all on the same page about that. And I would hope I've never conveyed that that's what I thought or anticipated be the expectation. But I want to say that because I know that when they reported this report to council, they canned it. They threw it out and they didn't add it to the 2013 master plan. And today it's still not in our master plan as a city. So my question is there a way we could have that as an agreement that the city considers establishing a housing affordability and accessibility committee throughout this project development in agreement with Avalon and this committee?
Yeah, I wonder, I mean, in theory, we could say, because I guess, look, the two contracting parties are what? The city and Avalon, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we could write in terms that would obligate the city to abide by its half of the agreement. Now, the problem is, because it's a political process, if it goes to a vote, the city might toss our CBO agreement into the garbage because they don't want to bind themselves.
Would they toss out the whole agreement, or could they vote out certain things?
I guess can they amend it?
I'm pretty sure it can be amended.
Oh,
okay.
So we can put all sorts of things. It says the city, I mean, to the extent that it's only obligating the city and not Avalon.
Gotta get the law.
Yeah.
I mean, the only kind of thought or process I see, Avalon, I mean, it started as a radical organization that was, excuse me, I won't say radical. It was started off as a very great grassroots organization that was squatting in buildings that were abandoned and not giving up the space for unhoused people. So with that same mentality in mind, everyone in the community is mentioning, you know, this is a huge issue. We've been talking about it since 2017 and years before when the recession happened. My only thought with Avalon involvement is just being in agreement or partnership with it. And I can't think of another stake outside of that, but I just think that this would be a really great project, an affordable housing project to help get the city to reopen and establish an affordable housing committee. Maybe I'm not making sense though. because that's possible too. 'Cause-
Yeah, I guess I never thought, I mean, I kind of like it because it's interesting, but in the sense that obviously we entered, the negotiations have been like, what will Avalon agree to? But I don't know if there's anything that stops us from saying what the city should agree to. I mean, I don't know. I would have to look at the.
Well, it's a political answer, like whether or not they agree to it, and that's on them. That's why they get the final say. So, like, we can present what we want to city council, to whether or not they agree to it or not. Like that's the whole point of the multiple tiers of voting, right?
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to pull up the
Yeah.
statute, the ordinance. Sorry.
I would share the Google. I don't want to share it because then
I'll
our
pull it up.
communication would be. Oh, yeah, but I'm just bringing this up because it just makes so much sense to me that this would be a topic of conversation that we're trying, like in this report, they found that there wasn't really a lot of research and data out there regardless already. So that is known. But they did their own study and they found that with their housing and affordable and accessibility survey, and rent and housing in Ypsi is increasingly becoming unaffordable and people are in cost debt. Am I saying that right? I didn't even hear about that until I read this report, basically paying over 30% of your income towards housing.
Oh, cost burdened.
Yes, cost burden. Thank you. I just feel like this is a really great space for Avalon and us to acknowledge the broader community of like having an impact in the community and having an impact in the greater broader community and reestablishing a committee that is primarily focused on researching and figuring out our affordable housing issue and housing market would be a huge value to Avalon's like public benefit, like or perception in the community. Like everyone already values the work that y'all are doing in Ann Arbor areas and have done. And I feel like this would be a really great way for you to show that same type of level of support in Ypsi and your newer project here by getting a committee going and having maybe an Avalon representative guaranteed on that committee in the city of Ypsi, where they have someone who is a representative Avalon Housing. I'm just throwing stuff out there, but I think this could be valuable.
So, how do we put that in proper words and then make a motion to have that added?
I think we would insert before so agreed, the city of Ypsilanti agrees to : and then start firing off what you want them to agree to.
So just so I'm clear, because that was a lot. So are you saying like, I guess is the ask like to have Avalon and the city like have this committee that would then just the developing and maintaining like positions within the committee, like that's what would get added into the agreement? It's just like having the committee, or are you talking about like breaking down everything that was in that study and like
no well, I would like the tenant right of first refusal to be added in a benefit, and also a just cause. I don't know if that's possible. We can talk more about that. The committee thing I was mostly speaking about is that through this agreement, through Avalon building an affordable housing project in Ypsi, the city agrees to reestablishing an affordable housing and accessibility committee for Avalon to have a seat at a registered affiliate person at that seat. And together we do analysis or whatever that committee can come from, but it would be a working committee.
I like that.
I'll make a motion myself. Can I do that? I make the motion to include the city reestablishing a affordable housing and accessibility committee with citizens or residents of Ypsi, along with not like residents who are unhoused, and representatives from affordable housing entities like Avalon.
A second.
Everyone.
Like Avalon?
Yeah, I
Not
guess-
saying-
I think Avalon definitely,
I just want to make sure that that's.
I don't know if you can put specific language like Avalon directly in it. I think that
the more specific, the better.
I think Avalon would be a great asset to that committee, given that they plan on having an affordable housing property in Ypsi. I think that they would have a lot of value to bring to that committee.
I just don't think it shouldn't be limited to Avalon.
Right.
Like any other.
Like Avalon, exactly. Yeah.
Can we say any other developer that enters into a community benefit agreement with the city? So that anytime this ever happens again, that new developer has to participate in the committee. Just an idea.
Let's think about that one.
Or could that just be like a rule of the committee? Is that if you're gonna be so I don't want to come up with the rules for that committee because it doesn't exist, but is that something that we would put in our agreement, or is it, that seems to be like something that the committee would figure out?
Yeah, Hayden, I like your thought process. My thought is that Avalon is kind of a unique developer in this situation.
No, I agree. I just trying to make it so that this committee isn't just the single ad hoc committee between Avalon only.
Yeah, and I agree. And that's why I think the language could say housing organizations, including Avalon, or something along those lines, or Avalon and other organizations who do housing services, something along those lines.
And then we could maybe add a tiny sentence at the end that says, the composition of the committee will be determined by city council at some point or something.
Or the committee. Yeah. City council or committee. Yeah. I don't know how that works, Evan. Like if the I don't know how that works, but do you have to have specific language, or is it okay to leave that up to?
You can write it however you want it, and then we can
amend it, approve it, or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The only reason I had thought city council, notwithstanding anyone's opinions of city council, is, and I don't mean that in a bad way, is that the committee, it would be hard for the committee to organize itself when there's no structure to it at the outset. Does that make sense?
Repeat that one more time.
Who picks the committee members?
Right.
I feel
right.
I just have
I
to
don't
think. I feel like this is way too big for me to even wrap my mind around right now. Beyond the scope of what I initially anticipated doing and serving on this committee for. This type of idea requires a lot more thought.
I mean, could we just say that a benefit would be the development or reestablishment of this committee to look at affordable housing issues going forward?
Yeah,
we could
leave it.
Yeah, we could say
it there.
Yeah, the city agrees to reestablish the Citizen Committee on Housing Affordability and Accessibility, and Avalon will agree to participate in its meetings. I don't know.
For ongoing.
That sounds great.
Is that something that Avalon would want to agree to?
Yeah. Would you like to attend this meeting?
I want to be careful in responding. You should recommend to council what makes sense to you. We then have to tell you, and then tell council what we're comfortable with, and council and Avalon at the end of the day, hopefully, can find common ground. Here's initial thoughts about this. One, you'll notice that we're pretty cautious about this because this becomes a legally binding document over the potentially 50 years. And as we understand it, the core purpose of this is in exchange for getting our pilot, a reduction in what we pay the city annually from taxes to a pilot, we promise to do certain things. If those things don't happen, depending on how things get written, the logic is our pilot could be put in jeopardy. I would be nervous if somehow the city acting or not acting on a committee was understood by people as whether or not our pilot was in place. But I don't know that you need to put that in language right now so much as I just want to toss that out there. That now, if you set up a committee, will we sit on it?
I mean, we sat on that committee.
We were on that committee.
No, so about that.
So that's not the issue. But I'm just trying to, you should, if you want to, if what I hear you doing is using this as an opportunity to tell council you should do something, I can understand that inclination. But I hope you would understand that we don't want a document that if council doesn't do something, our pilot is in jeopardy. The benefits that, and I don't think that was your intent.
Yeah, I don't think
But-
that would happen
But
per se.
that's my comment. So
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, even though I'm a lawyer, I'm not in this sector. Yeah, if the city breaches its own agreement, like its own,
I don't
community
think that would
benefits
put you,
agreement,
yeah,
I don't know, but I mean, I don't know what. Yeah, I mean, who knows what could happen?
right.
So if I can, so my end sentence on this and probably many new things would be, we don't know. We have to see it in writing and we'd have to show it to our attorney.
The other thing is, yes, of course, we would participate in something like that, even if not being mandated to do so in principle. And I don't want to assume that we are wanted on that committee on behalf of others.
Sure.
And so if there would need to be some flexibility in language in terms of, you know, if we're mandated to be on it, but then actually we're not wanted. Hope that's not the case. But
I respect that. Yeah, I respect that. I don't know what that could sound like in language as well, but I think just we don't need to get into the nitty gritty of it, like Yvonne said. And I think that having the city reenact and reestablish this committee and allow Avalon a place at the table.
Okay, I think that's better.
And also, I think that
Because I don't like whenever you say mandate. I don't want you to feel like you're like mandated to participate in that.
a note from our previous city clerk, our current interim city manager, to me, who's at home with, and texted me and said that anybody, it would have to have terms and require appointments. Like
That's what
how the
concern
committee
was.
structure works.
That's what I was going to say. It
Yeah.
probably would take like a sustainability commission type of structure, right?
It
Where
would
you're
take that
appointing.
structure, so I
yeah.
don't know that we could require a seat.
Okay, well that's fine.
for
Then
Avalon.
reenact.
So I think that like there in one of the documents it does say the city of Ypsilanti will, and so you could it could have an area where it says the city of Ypsilanti will
Reenact.
The Citizen Committee on Housing Affordability and Accessibility.
Yes,
Put it in there. Why not?
that's what I would like.
Seems simple enough. And yeah, I mean, and city council can strike it if they feel so,
Moved.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I just want, because I mean I know that the CBO is technically expired, but since
mean,
we
can
are
we-
operating off of it, it does say that it needs to be proportional community benefits. So I felt like that would be a somewhat proportional benefit to ask for given the project. I'm sorry, Hayden, what were you about to say?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking about this breach of contract issue. I mean, well, I guess this would give the city a cop out, but you could add a sentence that the city's failure to reinstate this committee would not constitute a breach of the contract, but that takes the teeth out of the provision.
I don't like I'm not an attorney either, and I feel like maybe we could do some Googling or research before the city council meeting, but I don't think that us putting that in there will do any harm. Because the most that will happen is the city council will say nope or okay, but we'll change this. And that's not up to us. So I think that would be still at least a good benefit to have on our end.
I'm gonna let Andrew chime in
Oh, okay.
about what.
I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah.
Is he here?
Is he in cyberspace?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
All right, I unmuted you. Can you hear me, Andrew? I think you're unmuted. Oh, do I have to do it? Do I have to do it on the other computer?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So this committee was a subcommittee of the Planning Commission. So this is not something that City Council engaged. It was through the Planning Commission when they were seeking data. To start any board or commission in the city other than an ad hoc body would require an ordinance, first reading, second reading, public hearing. And this ordinance would also have to describe what the mission of this body would be. What you could do is ask that an existing commission, such as our newly engaged Human Relations Commission, perhaps have an additional ordinance requirement that has them review housing accessibility issues in the city is kind of already within their scope, and you could just ask City Council to potentially amend this their enabling legislation to focus on the development of affordable housing. Just a suggestion.
Like, could you hear me okay? Sorry.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. Is it possible then you could say that the Housing Relations Commission would be able to create a subcommittee through their commission, kind of like what the Planning Commission did with the originally?
Any public body has the ability to create subcommittees.
Great. I appreciate that.
I want to make sure I got that right. So the Human Relations Committee could review and amend their.
No,
City Council would have to review and amend the ordinance. The Human Relations Commission can't amend their own ordinances. They could amend bylaws, but City Council would have to amend the ordinance.
So Andrew, in your expertise, in your opinion, how would you suggest like wording that? Like if you were to, would it say like that City of Ypsi would would re-amend or amend their Housing Relation Commission to ordinance to include that and also establish a subcommittee?
City Council can't direct the commission to do anything, but what you could do is to request City Council amend Chapter 58 to further focus on housing affordability challenges in the city of Ypsilanti.
I love that. Let's go ahead and make a motion on that one. Thank you, Andrew.
You're welcome.
I feel like he's like a wizard.
God.
Yeah, it's literally though. Because you can't see his face. So yeah, but okay.
So I'm trying to follow. He's a hard act to follow.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to
make sure you reference the act.
Yeah, and the numbers and everything.
Okay, so I got it, but we're going to request City Council to amend Chapter 58 of, I'm not sure what, to
City ordinance.
Human Relations. It's the Human Relations Commission ordinance, most likely.
Human Relations Ordinance
to include housing affordability
to further focus on affordable housing in the city of Ypsi
and accessibility. Let's throw that one in there too, because yeah.
Okay.
And then the other one was Oh, that's the same one. Okay, great, because I wrote it twice. So chapter 58 is the human relations ordinance.
That's what
Okay,
we
cool.
think, yeah.
Thank you. Oh, also he said you can't have them establish a subcommittee, but you could.
Well, I think the plan or the idea is that by adding affordable housing to its purview,
That
it
then
would
that look.
behoove them to somehow analyze the issue, theoretically in a subcommittee of some sort.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we've got two things going on now, right? Two new things. One, we're going to ask the city of Ypsilanti to amend chapter 58 of the human relations ordinance into the right of first refusal.
Well,
so
I mean, how would that work? Andrew, are you still there?
Yeah, the right of first refusal is a little bit more difficult because you're essentially saying if Avalon was to sell the property, that they would allow their tenants right of first refusal to. Are we thinking purchase the property? What do you mean by that?
Yes, purchase.
That I don't know if our city attorneys are going to agree to that, and I don't know if Avalon's attorneys will agree to that. Right now, since it is private property, it would make it difficult to require to make that. It would be difficult to make it legally binding. But if you put it in there, I'm sure both attorneys will review it, and then it will either make it to council or it won't.
Well, yeah, I want to make sure we're clear what we're saying about first refusal. Are we saying simply that the tenants at this specific property have the right of first refusal?
Well, yeah, that's what that would be. If the tenants, if Avalon was to sell, they would have to give the tenants the ability to bid on the property to purchase it. And if the tenants pass on that, then Avalon would then have the ability to sell the property. So that's something that the attorneys would have to work out. And I remember when this was brought forth by the Housing Affordability Committee, that was a concern.
Yeah.
Well, I think, I know that this often happens in condominium situations, but usually the people who live in the condominiums own their own condo. And then when the developer leaves the condo, like says we're selling this like the whole thing, they can buy it back.
It would also depend on how the development is structured. If it's not necessarily individual units per se, more of a larger development, you couldn't just sell one unit.
Is there a way that it could be that if Avalon no longer wants to be in charge or ownership of this property, that goes to whomever for the tenants for them to, is that what you're saying we can't do?
I mean, it's individual property rights. I'm just saying that I don't know that Avalon's attorney or our city attorney would agree to that. It would be very difficult to sell an entire 22 unit facility to a single purchaser that is already at a economic disadvantage. So I see that it just seems very unlikely.
I was thinking that people would probably put their money together versus like one individual, but I understand the sentiment.
This is, again, we're probably going too far into the weeds, but wouldn't the 22 people who are currently renting have to form some type of entity to be able to purchase under the right of first refusal?
Probably just in terms of sheer, logistics. Yeah, that would probably be the easiest way, because even if they purchase their individual unit, there's common space that has to be owned by someone. And so that's why I was thinking of the condo situation, because essentially people own their condo, but they don't own the common space, right? So they have to form some type of association.
Would that fall under then the previous benefit I mentioned a while ago, and then Desiree, Councilmember Simmons mentioned in a public comment about potentially like a tenants advisory council for this property? Like, would that be able to fit and fall into this somewhere? If
they would need to form a limited liability corporation in order to be a
Gotcha.
single entity, and then all those individuals would have to be part of that entity. Or what they would have to do is the property would be deeded, and every person that purchased it would be on the mortgage.
I know that another development project put something in the deed, Andrew, and I don't really remember what it was, but what it was.
It was not to do with this. It was, I believe, the 220 North Park, and I think that had their AMI was specific to the deed or some. I'd have to relook at that, but that didn't have necessarily anything to do with the
right. It runs with the land. Yeah, it's a little bit different.
I was just wondering if like how the deed aspect worked.
And those were also single family, and then townhomes that would have be individually addressed.
Yes. Okay.
So, and that's also that entire development is rather than platted, it's set up as a condominium.
Gotcha. Sorry, Katie.
It's covenanted for 20 years to remain at that level of AMI for the different units. I just read the covenant today.
I think the distinction though in this project is that the AMI thresholds and everything are locked in based on MSHDA loans and all that jazz. That's locked in from a separate thing, which, sorry, I don't want to take us too far.
No, I appreciate the conversation or dialogue.
So at least we're agreed on
the human relations.
Yes.
Chapter 58.
Although you did not
make a motion.
There's a motion.
I think
maybe there's a motion. I don't remember if there's a motion.
There wasn't.
Not yet.
Okay.
I made the motion for
making sure that you're clear that there's not a motion and it hasn't been voted on.
There's no motion.
So it's not written down.
We're writing down. We're coming up with ideas.
Okay.
Still flushing ideas out.
Go ahead, Hayden. Yeah, please.
I was curious, especially in light of the public comment, to what degree. I mean, I know Avalon's already locked in from its loans to the various specific AMI. And again, this is coming from a place of ignorance. Do those AMIs like ever change? Like, does MSHDA say, actually, you can change it? Or, yeah. So I'm curious because essentially, whereas in the other agreements, they locked it in by way of a covenant. And here, at least initially, we're locked into a certain structure. Does that structure remain for the entirety of the loan, or is it subject to change?
Let me clarify. The AMI by percentage stays the same. The dollar value of that AMI.
Well, yeah, sorry,
changes each year. I just want to make sure that's clear as I answer.
Sorry, yeah.
So it varies by funding source, and if you remember in the piece of paper we distributed last time, different funding sources have different length of time and different requirements. So the general answer is no. Those AMI commitments are meant to be for the full length of the funding source. Let me be clear so that someone doesn't later say I didn't point out something. If this project were to fail economically and head towards bankruptcy, all of these lenders have ways to get out of the affordability agreements in order to recapture funds if the project is going bankrupt. But at that point, nobody from Avalon will be calling the shots because we will have failed. And so, but I want to be clear, sometimes AMIs do change, but only when the situation's bad. So no, in general, you can assume that the AMIs will stay the same. The key exception to that couldn't be the following, which is our tax credit obligation is a 15-year compliance period. And the tax credits, if you remember, are the single largest source of financing. After 15 years, most affordable housing complexes need reinvestment, just like most private complexes need reinvestment over time. In the private setting, usually that owner, if they're responsible owners, gets additional money and they pay for it by raising rents. That's what we don't want to do, is raise the rents more than the 2% we spoke of in general. So every 15 to 20 years, we are typically refinancing these projects. So we're going to go back and try to get more tax credits in order to upgrade the physical aspects of the project. The AMI commitments do sometimes change with the new tax credits. I think in Avalon's case, I don't think we've made what I would call material changes to the AMI limits, but I don't, they do change. They can change a little bit. Those parties that have longer term agreements, MSHDA will have it with the home loan, the county will have it with the home loan. If the new AMIs are higher than the ones we've already signed on to, they can veto the new agreement.
Oh,
so they do have, it can't go above these, above is the wrong word, but we can't increase the AMI commitments without the agreement of anybody whose compliance period we're still in.
Yeah, because I guess the concern that I'm trying to avoid is that, like, say 15, 25 years from now, Avalon, changes the blend of units and changes the different thresholds or tries to, but it sounds like just as a matter of practice, that's extremely difficult to do without, say, MSHDA saying, no, if they have like the priority in terms of their.
Yeah. And I know the weeds are really not a fun place to be, but here we are. So at the end of this 15-year compliance period, when we try to bring in new tax credits, there will, by definition, have to be a sale of the property. It's from one entity that we control to another entity that we control, but they are legally separate entities, and the pilot does not automatically transfer. So in order to make that happen, and we've done this in Ann Arbor, and we'll presumably, if this all goes well, be doing it in Ypsi in 20 years, give or take, we come back to the local body and we say, this project, it's going to look seamless to you, but there's going to be a technical ownership change. We're going to bring in more money. We're going to spruce up the property. Typically, we don't really change the income mix. None of the tenants get evicted through the process. The rents don't typically go up more than the 2% that they've gone up, but we need you to give us a new pilot ordinance, because the pilot ordinance is between the ownership entity and the city. And when the ownership entity changes, the pilot ordinance has to change. And so that is a moment where the city of Ypsi will be one of those parties that have leverage, because we'd lose the pilot in the process of that refinance unless the city of Ypsi is satisfied with the new terms.
Then
sorry about the details, but
that's actually really helpful, because then it makes me wonder what happens to this. If it's linked to the old pilot and there's a new pilot.
That's a great question.
This is good for continuing.
That's a great question. I don't know at this point if it would need to be then,
because I'm not,
if it would
back
if it would need to be reevaluated. I don't know the answer to that right now.
You are, Hayden.
If it would need to be, because it is specific to, I believe it makes reference to even
The pilot.
in the background. It says,
so
pilot, but
it might need to be adopted or
is
updated as well.
Or even
Or just
saying in
extended or
this-
something.
Or even saying in this agreement that when the local body changes its technical ownership, that another process will get started. I have no idea like what.
Yeah,
like,
can we put something if so? Now this
Is it the worst thing if it gets renegotiated, if there's a new community benefits ordinance?
I don't
no,
think
well, so this is what I'm trying to say.
exactly. There might be new needs. There might.
But my concern is that, not that I'm assuming this will happen, but since the original community benefits ordinance died,
right?
there's no telling in 15 years whether it will be dead again.
And I do.
So my concern is, I think there should be a provision in this that says, in the event that a new pilot is executed for this property, that the city council, will review and agree to maintain a community benefits agreement.
What I would do for this is that the agreement before this pilot and all subsequent pilots for this development.
Okay.
So then you have to do it the one time.
Well, we have someone typing. Someone's typing this out, right? Okay. They're going to type your words, Andrew.
So what I would do is when you approve this agreement, make sure that it is an agreement for this pilot and subsequent pilots of this development.
It's fine by me.
Okay. And then with that being said, you're right, Hayden. It is technically expired. And so Andrew, Wizard of Oz, if you are there still, is it possible that we could put in the agreement that council also renew the community benefits ordinance to ensure that that happens, since this project and process was so amazing and everything?
Well, this agreement is separate from the ordinance.
Right,
Once this
right.
agreement is approved, I believe it's been in previous agreements that the community benefits ordinance be readopted.
Okay.
And from what I understand, council wishes to readopt it either
Okay.
as is or with amendment.
Okay. So it is in other agreements. No need to necessarily do it in this one. But
Not necessary, but
know,
you can put whatever you want in the agreement.
well, thank you.
It's like if the card make it so.
I know. Choose your own wild card. I mean, I would like to put that in there because I mean, I think that I know that council has every intention of renewing that. But that might be a good way just to have it on their plate when they see the agreement on Tuesday.
So we have a couple
This
things. That
agreement won't be on Tuesday's agenda.
Oh, it won't be? I'm so sorry. When will it be?
This first, it will have to have a public hearing, which needs to be noticed as per the CBO ordinance. And then it has a public hearing in which representation from this committee will provide a presentation to council regarding the agreement. And then the subsequent council meeting is when the agreement will be voted upon. So we have to do the noticing requirement. This won't get on. We could hope to have it on by October 3rd, but it definitely won't be approved until at least the second meeting in October.
Okay. I appreciate that because I was very misinformed. So thank you for correcting me.
I think I led you astray, so that's my fault.
Oh, that's okay. No,
I'll take responsibility.
Oh, that's everyone. I love personal.
We'll share it over here.
What I was going to say is then, is anything happening at this upcoming Tuesday meeting in regards to this then? No, right?
We haven't received the agenda yet for the next upcoming meeting, so I don't know.
Okay.
I don't see why there would
There's
be.
nothing on it.
Okay. So, all right. So thank you for that clarification. Okay. So they are going to do it in the future. But I still think it would be great to include that language in our community benefits agreement. And I don't know if there's any suggestions for like maybe there's like amendment suggestions or anything. We don't need to get into that details of stuff because we do have only an hour left. But I wonder if we could just add that at least into the agreement that the city council look to amend and renew the CBO.
How do you want that worded? Could you repeat that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the ask is.
Really?
Really, at this point, I'm lost.
I'm sorry. Okay, let me try this again. Andrew, jump in if you need to as well, if my language is just not well. What I was saying is, you mentioned, Andrew, in other agreements that they put that the council continue or renew or amend or that like vote.
I would just say, request city council readopt either as is or as amended.
Okay, great. Thank you, Andrew. Okay,
You're
so
welcome.
that's what I was asking, is if we could put in here that city council readopt as amended or with amendments, the community benefits ordinance, since it is technically expired right now.
The CBO and not this agreement.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the actual ordinance you're referring
So
to.
this, okay, so this is the ask. So we've got now 2 asks.
No, I think there's
Council.
3 things that you guys still need to vote on. The Human Relations Commission in regards to Housing Subcommittee, the agreement that the pilot and the future ones, and then the most recent one that was just mentioned about
So that's 3.
the CBO.
Okay, got it. Okay.
So can we take a second and vote on those things?
Yeah.
Are we
Good idea,
add it
Aaron.
together?
I think we're happy with these.
Should we do them
Okay.
individually?
I so move to add these 3 provisions to the agreement. 2 of which obligate the city to do something, and only
No,
1 of
3.
which
Oh.
defines the terms of the agreement.
So
That
one,
makes sense.
so one, we make one is to make a motion to amend chapter 58 of the Human Relations Ordinance to further focus on affordable housing and accessibility in the city of Ypsilanti. 2,
Should we just?
we can vote on all 3 together. I just want to.
Oh, okay.
2, make a motion that this pilot and subsequent pilots,
That this agreement apply to.
this agreement apply to this pilot and subsequent pilots of this development. 3, we request that the city council readopt as is or an amended community benefits ordinance. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Okay, and we'll do a roll call vote for this to make sure everyone's on the same.
We'll readopt this. Sorry, we'll readopt this
As
CBA
is.
CBA as is.
No. The community benefits ordinance as it was previously written or as amended.
No. But we're talking about the pilot. This-
Oh, sorry.
pilot.
I thought we were still on the third one.
Agreement for this pilot and subsequent pilots of this development.
That this written agreement be in place, right, for this the pilot that's been currently granted and subsequent ones that follow for this development, right?
Yes. So like in 15 years when they have to transfer.
Yes.
out.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. The once and future agreement.
Yep. Michael, go ahead.
Why are we not doing the third one in this vote?
We are.
But that is
We
all
are.
3.
There was 3. The first one was the chapter 58. The second was the pilot. And the third one was the council would amend or as is the CBO ordinance.
That they would readopt.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Correct.
Michael.
A community benefits ordinance.
Yes.
Correct.
That's what I put. Like, I don't know
that's
if you
fine.
like that, but like that's.
As you vote, I just sort of want to give you a quick sense of how I think we're responding to these, because they're not in writing and we haven't.
Actually, wait 1 second. Can I cut you off first? We need to vote and then I'll let you speak. Is that fine?
You made the motion. You made the
Yvonne.
motion.
Yeah.
Yvonne did.
Yeah. Sorry.
Cat seconded.
I want to hear it before they vote.
Oh,
I'd like to hear Michael before we vote.
okay. There you go.
And then
I moved
Okay,
to
is everyone-
the motion.
Sorry.
We
Hold on.
already made the motion to
Hold on.
vote.
I think we need to vote first and then, yes,
Okay.
correct. Katie,
We
can you do the
also
roll call?
amend our list if we need.
Yes.
to.
True.
Aaron Boltma.
We're voting on what you guys just
You're voting
presented.
yes or no.
Yes.
Catherine Layton.
Yes.
Yvonne Cudney.
Yes.
Jason Cloutier. Charlene Weir is absent. Hayden Pendergrass.
Yes.
Motion passes with 5 yeses.
Sorry, what were your thoughts on what we just passed?
That's fine, actually. So for numbers 1 and 3, I think I already said it. The main issue would be that the final language not somehow put the pilot at jeopardy because of council doing or not doing something. I've already spoke to that. On number 2, we're just going to have our attorney give us advice on whether having language now that restricts future negotiations might make it, some of our funders might have problems with it now.
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
As I understand the second point, it's putting
Pilot future one?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
pilot future one. It's putting into this agreement the notion that if we are refinancing this property and therefore going through and therefore need a new pilot for the new ownership entity that's maintaining the property, that the content of this pilot should continue in it. That's how I understood the ordinance. And we just need to get our attorney's take on whether putting language in an agreement today that is intended to limit some future agreement that we can't possibly right now know all the details around could make it harder for us to do our project today.
And
Yeah, I think
I mean, all of it.
I'm not saying against it. I'm just acknowledging that we've not had a chance to show that to our attorney.
Got it.
And that one has more implications than the other 2.
And I think that I mean, that's a safe point for the entire agreement, is it's all still subject to approval of both attorneys as.
Sure. Yeah, I think the intent is that we don't say in 15 years when there's a new pilot, this goes in the trash can.
I frankly would be okay if there's a new pilot and there, as a community benefits ordinance, it gets renegotiated, because there could be different needs in the future. I mean, it's not the end of the world. It's not a deal breaker to me.
I think as long as it's worded in a sense, it's like not the specific agreements, because you're right, needs could change essentially, but having it to where, and when the actual technical owners of the development change, that there will be a guaranteed agreement or benefits process for that redevelopment or renewal of ownership of some sort.
We can try to set that up, but there's no way we can control it's going to happen in 15 years.
But my question is, though, is it went from this being a 50-year pilot to now we're looking at possibly 15 years of expiration of a CBA. Like, I'm confused of how we went from 50 years of this CBA going to be for to now 15 years potentially, because there's a technical change in the legal body ownership. Like, that's a really big.
High tech.
Yeah, that I'm not a business owner. I don't know how that stuff works, but like
Can I just clarify? I understand what you're saying, but remember, if a new owner doesn't, they'll also start paying full taxes. So the benefits are tracking the obligations on a year-by-year basis is the best way I can put it.
So what happens then in 15 years when you are doing a new ownership of this property? Is there a likelihood it could go to a for-profit developer? No?
No, he just said it's
always through Avalon, but it's a different name.
Well,
Sorry, I
don't want to.
No, it's okay. That's why I'm glad I'm asking.
Conceptually, in 15 years, a nonprofit can sell the property to a private owner. We would owe back all the public money. Or most of the public money. That private owner would have no right to a pilot, so they would start to pay full taxes. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you think about this agreement as saying I know we put a big number on it. What's the total value that you calculated or the city calculated?
2 point something million.
2 point something million, yeah.
But we're not getting that today. We're getting that annually over 50 years. And the best way I can describe this 15-year or 30-year transaction is, yes, if in the middle of the agreement, the owners were to change, and then more importantly, I think to you, the new owner were no longer to provide affordability, then this agreement would stop and that new owner would have to pay full taxes going forward. So the city wouldn't have gotten 50 years of affordability, but the city also would be collecting full taxes once the affordability stops.
I guess our concern, I guess what that second provision that we just voted on was supposed to capture was if another, like, if in 15 years a new pilot agreement has to be, you know, executed by the city, like, we want this to apply to that pilot too, or some commitment that another agreement will be entered to, either by virtue of a new CBO or by virtue of, like we put in the contract, that this gets renegotiated.
Yeah, because
I'm not worried about the for-profit thing. I get that part. I'm worried about this writing, surfing the wave of pilots to the you know, into the sunset.
I think, right. Okay. So I want to address, Michael just described, and that happens with this type of funding. That happens sometimes. But you also said previously, Michael, that it's your plan, Avalon's plan, that not your plan, but Avalon's plan, that there will be it will be a seamless transition, and there you have a separate entity that will then begin managing, or you will transfer ownership to a separate entity under Avalon. So it can be 50 years.
It seems like, though, like with that changing of entity after 15 years, like it's up to Avalon or Avalon 2 or Avalon B, however you want to say it, their second entity that picks it up, of whether or not they're going to agree to the terms of whatever we agree to here. And I think that's the concern that we have, is how do we guarantee that, or at least have this happen again in 15 years. So like because our needs are going to be different, or should be, hopefully, so we can address that differently. So maybe maybe.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm open to amending what we just said, is like either this rides along with this pilot and every subsequent pilot, or it gets renegotiated at every subsequent pilot. I don't know. I think that the possibility that there not being a CBO on the books and this agreement not being binding on subsequent pilot is a real possibility.
Yeah.
And that really grinds my gears.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
And I also, I don't know what else, Andrew, I hope you're still there. Like how, okay, cool. Like how I just really I would really hate for a transition of ownership of this development to somehow automatically go into the hands of someone that could skyrocket the housing affordability that's already not really affordable right now. So like if in 15 years the pilot no longer exists, or Avalon changes ownership, or whatever happens, is there a way that this development or this property can be reconsidered for some type of public enhancement, or some type of public support, or some type of, like, instead of it going to like,
yeah. There's two issues there. I mean, because
if I could say really quick, the pilot was approved for 206 Washington, and that's the name of the pilot. The pilot was approved for 50 years. This agreement is linked to that 50-year pilot. If for some reason Avalon or a future entity that now owns that property breaches this agreement, they lose their pilot regardless. So that's what the pilot was approved at. If Avalon wants to renegotiate what the terms of that pilot are, they would need to bring that to the city. But also, with that being said, is council cannot bind another council into the future. So anything you do today, just like any agreement, it can end. There is no forever in any agreement.
Oh, but it is attached to the property, not.
No, the pilot.
Correct.
Oh,
it's attached to the pilot.
Yes,
property,
right. Yes.
So it's
Oh.
if a new entity changes and they want to change the terms of this agreement, they will need to bring that request to city council. And if city council says no, then it's going to terminate the pilot anyway.
We don't even need that second.
That's
that
what I'm
second-
saying. Do
yeah,
we need the
We
second
don't
one
even need the second
in there?
one.
I thought you were talking about after the 50 years, not 15.
No, we're talking about the after the 15.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, 1, 5, and 5, 0 sound a lot similar. So I see how that
Fair.
got confusing.
Yeah. So really this agreement is for that 50-year pilot.
Oh, okay. Then I feel less concerned about it.
I think
I can.
So can I make a motion to strike number 2?
yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye. Oh, sorry. Are you doing a roll call? I'm so sorry.
We should do a roll call.
Okay.
Should we? I feel like we should, just to
Yeah, do
clarify.
it just to be safe.
Yeah.
Okay, when you're ready.
Sorry. Writing. Aaron Boltma,
Yes.
Catherine Layton,
Aye.
Vaughn Cudney.
Yep.
Jason Cloutier,
Abstain.
and Hayden Pendergrass.
Yes. So-
Okay.
So can I raise, well, I have 2 questions. And this is totally unrelated to anything we've discussed thus far. So
Great.
that makes people feel better. So as to number 4, the guiding principles one, which is my baby. Is it my understanding that the quote unquote guiding principles are like actually written down things?
Not have something called guiding principles.
Okay, see, that's what
We
I
have-
was that's what I was trying to clarify last time, and someone
We
said
have
guiding
values.
principles. Oh, it's values.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it's guiding values, not principles that are written down.
Because I mean, look, this
I mean,
is
or continuing its mission. I mean, like it could just be as simple as that.
well,
Have a mission, right? Do you, I mean, do you guys have a mission?
Thing is,
yeah, I guess. No, that's fine. No. My concern, and this was my concern originally, is like I was hoping to link that provision to something codified, if that makes sense. Even if that codified thing is subject to revision by Avalon down the line, because my original concern was like, obviously, I don't believe Avalon's going to backslide in its goals and its mission. It would have to cease being a nonprofit organization, et cetera. Like, there's a lot of things that would have to happen for Avalon to back off of all the things that all the public good, all the benefits that it provides of its own volition, right? Whereas in other CBAs, committees have had to negotiate for these types of things. Like, please connect people with job training. Please do this. But that's like inherent to Avalon. So I was trying to link it to something that's, I don't know. And I don't know if values is something. I don't know. I mean, I don't know anything about like the corporate governance of Avalon and like what binds it or what guides it. And that's just, my ignorance. So.
Because
So I'm done extemporizing. I'm just.
No, we're looking at each other because in general, we've tried to not be writing you're coming up with an agreement that binds us. So it's a little weird for us to tell you the language on how to do it. So
yeah, I guess what I'm
respond to your suggestions.
I'm on a fact finding mission. I'm not asking you how to write it. I'm asking factually.
I think if I'm understanding you correctly, you're interested in the types of services commitments we're making and kind of maintaining fidelity to our model. The model is called Housing First.
Yeah. Okay.
So there is a set of commitments that we make through our tax credit application process that are very substantive, and those commitments are service commitments. And they're also housing first commitments. So, I don't know if somehow the addendum 3 could be helpful to that. Yeah. So if you saw the service plan, addendum 3, which is part of our application, everything my sense is what you're asking.
Can you speak into the mic?
Oh shoot, is reflected there.
Okay, because I would likely try to amend number 4 to reflect that, because if guiding principles is a fictitious thing that doesn't exist, then I don't want it in the contract. I want the real thing in the contract. So I don't know if that means changing it to Avalon will commit itself to continuing its housing first model throughout the duration of the pilot. I don't know if that sufficiently captures that concept. I mean, I also worry about saying service plan and addendum 3, because one day some agency is going to change it to addendum 6, and
Right.
that's going to be bad. Right, but the mission is at such a high level of generality that it doesn't necessarily mean they'll be providing the services they've presented that they in the course of these meetings, if that makes sense. And I see the values too. Those are all good things. I'm more interested in the actual service commitments, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because we come into this, I don't know, this committee with kind of the benefit of having a developer who already does things that we don't have to ask for. But I don't want them to stop doing it sometime down the line. Not that I'm assuming they will. That's my concern. That makes sense.
I think it's good to be cautious. You never know how priorities change over time. That's possible. I think it's probably better to use the actual language that Avalon Housing uses rather than guiding principles, since that's not what the terminology is. And I would agree amending it to saying something like mission
and it's
housing first approach, or
maybe to continuing its mission by
using a housing first model, or
and then throughout the duration of the pilot. Or if you have, I don't know.
No, this goes back to our awkwardness.
Yeah, sure.
That's fine. It's a little more specific. This would not be the first time an attorney didn't like what their own client said. So I just want to, I want to sort of, I think I got your question made sense. And I think this moves it to language that is narrower and a little more meaningful. I don't expect we're going to be writing to staff saying our attorney told Aubrey and I we shouldn't have opened our mouths and he doesn't like that language.
Sure.
But it is possible. And so that's where I want.
Okay.
That's all I wanted to say.
Well, I'm willing to take the risk as long as the rest of the committee is too. So I move to amend number 4 to say continuing its mission by using a housing first model, its housing first model throughout the duration of the pilot.
Is everyone in support of that?
I second that.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
oh, you're good. We did that. That was good.
I don't know where this is coming from. I'm a little bit reticent in the sense that I think that the housing first model hasn't always been the best model. I'm not saying that it isn't the best model now, but
in time it could change.
So that's where my reticence.
The evidence-based housing I have no idea.
I think it's hard because we trust what Avalon is doing, and the Avalon is going to continue to do, what they do. And so, but to put that into words that I get that then it can tie you all to something that maybe not, it's hard.
I think that's why I like the values or the mission, because it's vague enough that if the model changes, it will still comport with their mission and values, although those admittedly could change.
Okay. So going off of that, instead of it being like a specific model that we name, maybe it could be, I know Avalon uses a harm reduction approach most times, right? No, all times. I'm sorry. Harm reduction approach because I remember Bree mentioning the kits and needles and okay. So what if it's possible that we could say Avalon will commit itself to continuing its missions and values by using a harm reduction approach throughout? Because I feel like that approach is kind of the foundation a little bit. I don't know if people disagree with me on that.
I mean, could we just say Avalon will commit itself to continuing its mission and values throughout the duration of the pilot?
I know it's vague, but I also feel like those models change.
Yeah,
Harm reduction wasn't always a thing either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a best practice. I almost want to say best practices, whatever those are.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's why I said evidence-based. Hayden, you made the motion first, and I seconded it, but
I'm going to vote against my own motion if we
Well-
vote.
but do you?
Well, I'll amend my motion.
Well, would you like to make a motion instead of what Aaron and Yvonne suggested of saying mission and values?
Does it help to hear value?
I mean, I saw it on the website. I mean, I get that. It's I mean, yeah, let's do that. Because I mean, at least here and now, Avalon has articulated its mission and values. So
That's never changing. Client-centeredness is not going to change necessarily in the future models. And that's like a very, I don't know, unique aspect of, I think Avalon Services is that they're client-centered, they're person-centered, I don't know if that's something, but
So community.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think,
We need a second for the amended motion.
What is the
what is
motion?
the amended one?
Oh,
my amended motion is to change item number 4 on the printed list to say Avalon will commit itself to continuing its mission and values throughout the duration of the pilot.
Yvonne seconds.
Is everyone in support of that?
Yes.
Aye. Any opposed?
Okay. We did that one.
The second one.
I did actually.
Yeah, go, please.
It actually has to do with the shed.
Yes, thank you. I was gonna bring that up.
Not just the shed, also has to do with the bench.
Ooh.
We've talked about a shed and bench.
But it's not on here yet.
So yes, so I know we've expressed earlier concerns with respect to the sheds that number one, the historic district commission might say, don't you dare touch my sheds. And there's also probably
Just wanted to clarify that they remain, that they just not be torn down, but they be refurbished to
Whatever.
be, yeah,
I know
usable to some
that's what they've said so far.
Yeah, yeah.
My
correct.
concern is if we say, let's throw bike racks, let's throw tools in there, they say, oh no, you're ruining my precious ancient shed.
They can't dictate what the functionality can be
Okay.
on private property. Just think of it like the aesthetic, like what
Okay. Well,
can
then
be livable, functional, but they cannot dictate the actual like usability of
Got it.
someone's private property.
Right.
I think it was we or
Oh,
us
okay. Sorry.
who were uncomfortable promising specific functions,
Right.
not knowing how they would impact our obligation to maintain the integrity of the sheds.
Okay.
We want to use them too, but
So I was trying to conceive of, because we're kind of nearing the finish line and we need specific language. I was trying to think of how can we articulate specific language saying that Avalon agrees to utilize the sheds for
Community
something.
based sharing or organize. I don't know. Because the thing I liked about the tool shed idea was that there's a lot of not every single person on this block and house on the block needs a lawnmower or a drill or there's so much benefit that could come, and that would integrate the community members into the Avalon property. So there's not this, not in my backyard or separation type of feeling. So I don't know. I like the idea of a tool shed because Avalon already has facilities. So I'm sure there's, repurposing of facilities I could go on. I have no idea how that works, but I don't know how you could word that
Well,
otherwise.
And I'm also worried that if, like, say along the line, not that I'm saying it will be, the tool lending library is a bust for whatever reason, that they're not locked into using it only as a tool shed, but they could use it for something else.
Right.
That could be a beneficial
To the community.
So I don't know if we say like Avalon agrees to use the sheds for communal purposes, or
Enhancing
maybe.
the public support. That was that I read that in the report. I didn't
Okay.
make that up. Yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't make that up. That was in the report.
You know,
argue with it.
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to, insofar as such thing doesn't destroy the shed or like whatever.
You could do like community access or community, like, I don't know how you want to. I know, right? It's like
It's like right there. You're like, what is this? I use my hands a lot. Like, what is that?
Michael, have you guys had thoughts about how you might utilize the sheds, or has that been like just something that I'm just curious.
Yeah,
like,
no,
if
we've had thoughts, because the idea of spending money on structures that are going to have no use other than being there is a little frustrating. The most specific thought would be whether or not we can use that shed for some covered bike storage that we have a commitment to make. The Planning Commission asked us to increase the number of sheltered bike storage. We don't know if they're going to work for that yet, and we hope they will. And if they will, that would make sense in multiple ways. We've generally thought about other purposes, but because there's no utilities there and there aren't going to be, it's hard to envision
That's
a
why
wide range of activities taking
Right.
place there.
That's why I was thinking it could be like a meeting space or the tenant advisory committee. I don't know. I'm just thinking it doesn't have to,
I don't know how
something
big
that
the
doesn't,
shed is.
I don't know. I'm just, it obviously needs to be revamped.
I do like the idea of parking bicycles there, frankly.
There's two. So there's two sheds. There's one on each side and they're quite large. And I know you want to bring up the bench too, Hayden, and I don't want to.
The bench might be the easier one. Avalon agrees to install a bench out front. I mean, that's yeah. Something. I mean, the language part of that is pretty straightforward. I don't know.
Oh wait, so the bench part was just what was it again?
I mean, you could also
your mic.
You could also do something that like was either bike storage or bike racks.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so like either for the sheds or
anywhere.
Somewhere on the property, right? Like, and then it's not necessarily
bike storage.
It's true. We could just say bike
the
storage.
sheds
period.
aren't gonna remain just
okay
as is in perpetuity. I can't imagine that the Historic District Commission thinks that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I haven't reviewed all of that though, so I can't actually speak to it. I just know that, like, you know, they don't want them to just exist for the sake of existing.
Right.
I can't imagine.
I just chat GPT'd some quick little generic
Nice.
language.
As one does.
As one does these days. But something along the lines of the allocation of a communal multi-purpose space within the community intended for the benefit and use of the residents of Ypsi for various shared activities and initiatives.
Perfect.
How does everyone feel about that? I like
It sounds good, but it does sound AI generated.
Yeah, totally.
Okay with it.
Are you real?
But that way it leaves the sheds where, like, yes, a tool shed can happen, but if that isn't likely to happen or realistically going to happen, that your agreement doesn't go out the wall or the window and that you're not in ordinance or whatever with the agreement. And there's also a pivot point where you can think, okay, what other type of communal efforts or initiatives can be in those sheds with that and the agreement.
I agree with not limiting it. Can you read what you just read again?
Yeah, it's obviously this can be changed and edited. But that the sheds or the historic sheds will be used or allocated as a communal multi-purpose space intended for the benefit and use of the residents of Ypsi and residents of the property for various shared activities and initiatives. Enhancing public support.
Yeah, I mean, could we throw at the end, maybe including but not limited to a tool lending library, bike racks, or other things?
I like that language, attorney. Yeah, it's good.
Again, my reticence. There needs to be parameters because it's Avalon's property and it's their residents' home, right? So even though the tool sheds aren't immediately in the area, like there still has to be some control by Avalon, I think, right? Like they can't just say these sheds are open for you all to use whenever you want.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
All the time. Right?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is it's got to be limited in a way that works for them.
Well, could we say community programs and initiatives administered by Avalon? Or something like that. Because then it says, like, what we're talking about is the things they want to do inside the shed.
Or even opening it up to other community organizations like the center, the community center, because then that takes a little bit of the responsibility off of Avalon, and maybe that space could be utilized that way as well. I agree. I didn't mean for it to come off that way if that's how it sounded, but more so.
It's AI generated.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Oh yeah, you're right. I didn't do that. ChatGPT did.
You're free of all blame.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so the allocation.
So I sort of like, I keep going back down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is there a way to somehow, and this might just be too limiting, but the fifth one, like Avalon will collaborate with community partners to offer appropriate programs that are available to the wider community in the community space at 206 North Washington, and maybe the sheds.
Okay, and actually that's
or one of the sheds.
Yes.
The community space and sheds.
Yeah, I feel like the space should be changed to center just for their language purposes.
Okay.
And also could include sheds. I like that idea.
May I just say one thing? Because I wasn't able to respond to that inquiry earlier. So an issue that we have throughout our housing stock is a lack of storage. And this is our first site out here in Ypsilanti. We don't have another site for storage elsewhere that we could leverage in terms of our properties. So just a concern I have is if it's possible that these sheds, that the integrity of these sheds is such that we can use them for storage. Our own maintenance storage needs for this property may need to occupy much of those sheds. I don't know that for a fact, but it's a good possibility indicated by every other property we manage where we don't have enough storage. So I just want to acknowledge that need on behalf of Avalon.
Yeah.
In light of this request.
We appreciate that. I appreciate that.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I wonder if we could maybe duplicate number 5, but add an if clause that says if sufficient space is available
for the sheds.
I mean, could it just say like collaborate with community partners to offer appropriate programs that are available to the wider community in the community space, parentheses, S, like community spaces.
Well, I think the idea there for that one is actually to be the community center.
Yeah, that's supposed to, that will.
But I like where you're headed, which is you could say in the community centers and comma, if sufficient space is available, comma, the shed.
Yeah.
So if I could say one thing, those sheds and being that it's a historic structure, And then you have to look at building department ordinances and property maintenance code laws. It could be very cost prohibitive to do a lot with those sheds. I think it's I would just be very, very careful with that, because that could be a lot.
All right, can we talk about the bench?
Yeah, let's talk
So
about
I
the
don't-
bench really fast and then
The sheds aren't a possibility, then the sheds aren't a possibility. I think we have a good basis here already.
yeah,
talk about the
before we move that to the bench, can we amend the one for the community space to say community center real
yes.
quickly?
Yes, I
And
think
then we
that
can
was
move
the-
on to the bench, please.
I think that was the intent of that.
So I'll
So, yeah, I mean, you can call it anything you want. It doesn't
Okay.
have an official name. I probably would just say community room. Community
Room,
center
room.
implies
Okay.
room,
much
okay.
more than we have.
I called
Yeah,
it center because of the blueprint, but room is
Yeah,
good too.
I think we've used that language, but we're talking about a room
Yeah.
with some
Okay.
bathrooms near it.
Yeah, I so moved to amend number 5 to say community room, not community space.
At 206 North Washington.
Yes, I'm just that one.
Yeah. Community
a second.
center at 206. Yeah.
Yes.
Community room.
Who's seconds?
Yvonne.
Is everyone in favor of that? Say aye. Any opposed? Okay.
I do want to come back to the sheds, but we can come back to the bench first. Go with the
We can
bench.
table the sheds,
We'll
but
table the sheds because I want to get to I want to get to the bench.
untable the bench.
Yeah, let's untable the bench.
Well, so anyway, the only reason I bring it up is that, I don't know, 3 meetings ago, we had discussed, when we were discussing public transit, obviously the depot's like right there. So it's not a far walk, but there was a kind of a concern about some place for people to, set down groceries as they come inside or something along those lines. So anyway, it seemed like the idea of a bench was a workable one at that juncture. So I don't know. I mean,
I agree. The property, I'm just looking at the initial presentation from Avalon with like the rendering of site plan. And there's not as much green space in the front as there is on the original plan. But where is the bus stop in this? Is it on Washington or is it on I don't actually.
If your question is there a bus stop directly in
It's
front of
it's
our
a transit-
property?
it's
There's
a
not.
transit center. Okay, so
There's one on the other side of the street.
That's what I was
going the
wondering,
other
what's the-
direction.
okay.
But there's nothing
that is on Washington.
heading
That's what I was
north
wondering if it was
on Washington.
Okay. So I don't know if there's like a spot for a bench and I don't know if we have to specify a place or if we can just say a public sitting bench. I don't know if.
I'll just weigh in that at most of our properties where we have benches out front, that works just fine. But we have unfortunately had recent challenges, specifically at 2 properties where actually AAATA removed the actual bus shelters as a result of issues occurring not in relation to our residents. So we would just ask that if this is a provision that's in place, that there be the option to remove it if it were to become problematic. In both of those locations, that was done at the request of tenants living in those buildings, in addition to others in the community neighborhood, despite our best efforts and a lot of proactive intervention around what was happening. So I'll just put that out there.
Yeah, I think the thought when we were first talking about this was like, since there's not, parking really at this location, a lot of people may be using like ride shares and, Ubers and Lyfts and stuff, like if they were coming home with groceries or, and so having just kind of a place to like set things when they're getting out of the car. That's what one person brought up.
It sounds like y'all aren't opposed to that, but want to have the flexibility of being able to remove it if it serves not beneficial anymore to the. Is it possible to say something like tenant majority, decided or something like that for the again, I feel like every time I say, is it possible? People are like, anything's possible with this. But
Oh, that's not wrong.
yeah. But Aaron, you mentioned the parking issue, and I did mention at the very first meeting, the Area 5 residential parking permit. I don't know if we could also have that Avalon pay for the Area 5 residential parking permit if they have exceeded their 3-car limit for tenants to have a parking permit. I don't know if we could. I remember bringing that up, but then I forgot that I brought that up, and now I'm remembering it.
There was didn't I? I'll.
Someone said that they could do petty cash. I remember that they have petty cash that they could help out with.
There was.
I think it was something where like, I don't know that it would need to be in the agreement, but it's something that like Avalon could help folks with if that was a need that they had.
Yeah, I kind of vaguely remember them already including in their services some assistance with public, like parking passes. Is that right?
We help folks with bus tokens and getting fair deal cards. We can occasionally provide more direct support or assistance for people around vehicle issues, that kind of thing. That's generally what we've done historically. So I think if someone owned a vehicle and parking was a barrier, we might be able to help navigate, but to pay for, I don't know the cost of that pass, or, you know,
$25. I think.
It's like $25. Yeah.
for a year, for how often?
Yeah, for
a year.
Pretty, I mean, pretty reasonable, I think, but I just don't know if it's something that needs to be in the agreement.
Well, anything can be in the agreement.
What then the question is, should anything be in the agreement? I guess the next.
I know, but I'm thinking that $25 is a lot to a person who doesn't have a lot, and I trust that Avalon would give someone petty cash dependent on that. But I'm thinking, like, what if the time comes where that's not the case because of a funding issue or doing it for the person already? But I don't know. I'm just thinking of random things. So like, I like the idea of it being in the agreement, so that way for the duration of this agreement, we know that the people who are in the 8 supportive housing units and the 14 affordable housing units will have guaranteed parking permit if there's no spots available for them in the 3 spots lot. That's what I was hoping for. But that does nothing to do with the bench. And I divulged us from this freaking bench again.
Because I do. We have 10 minutes.
Well, we don't technically, like, we can go whenever we want, but we're on Yvonne's 10-minute warning.
On schedule.
Yeah, we're on Yvonne's. But I know that I make a motion to include an Area 5 residential parking permit so we can move on to a bench. Would anyone like to second that?
Second that.
It's a residential parking permit for this area.
Just to not to stop you from moving. So the wording would be Avalon agrees to assist its residents in securing
residential parking permit.
Parking permits. Okay.
If the lot or
where's the community benefit in that?
Well, that's the benefit to the residents at that point. The benefits can serve the residents and all of City of Ypsi. So that would be a specific resident benefit.
I guess the cost of the parking pass goes into the city's coffers.
Could you repeat what you said?
I don't know. I was making it up.
I think Jason seconded it.
Yeah,
I just want to make sure
the
wording.
Oh,
Avalon agrees to assist its residents in acquiring residential parking pass.
Yeah, if the 3 spots are overflown.
Yeah. Or if the parking capacity is at full or whatever.
Oh yeah, you could put an if on there.
Yeah,
And if they own a vehicle and can prove as such, because.
Well, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That is
right.
what we.
You have to have a vehicle on the residential parking permit. You have to put your license plate number and all of that. So it should have a.
But that, yeah, I mean, adding that, I think that's a friendly amendment, adding that language. But
again, this is new, so we're mumbling a little here to try to
Sure.
see if frankly, to see if it's clean enough that we can give a yes or no right now. And you won't be surprised to hear me say my usual, which is we're going to need time to review it. I think the key issues here is, one, it's $25 a year now. It may not always be. And I think we're a bit reluctant in general to agree to very broad requirements that we don't know the financial implications down the road. So if there's 3 spots and there's 22, places, then it's sort of 19 times whatever it might be. Now it's reasonable. We don't know what it'll be. So that's just a concern.
Yeah, like I understand that. Like we could also say like we could want the architect to draw up 5 parking spots instead of 3, so it would be easier.
So that was my second piece is a little bit of, we thought we had negotiated parking with Planning Commission.
Okay.
And we weren't expecting to renegotiate it here. That isn't to say you can't, but we're a little caught off guard a little bit. We thought we had handled the parking from the city's point of view at Planning Commission, but that's that's why that's why I'm pausing, at least.
Right. Yeah, I guess maybe the wording that I propose may be at a high enough level of generality that it doesn't necessitate, I don't know.
Yeah, you don't have to say completely assist, but will help assist.
Yeah, assist.
Acquire.
By which I mean that could be subsidizing it.
Yeah.
The full value. I don't know.
Man, by your own admission, like most of your tenants don't have cars, so it's not going to be a concern.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so this is what I have written down. Avalon agrees to assist its residents with acquiring a residential street parking pass with proof of vehicle by resident requesting.
With proof of vehicle ownership?
Yeah, that's required by the city. But yeah,
it's already within the permit process.
Yeah.
It is. But we can put it in here too, I guess. If you want to. Just so it's clear. But yes, it would be.
Okay, make
a motion for that.
Second.
Since it's a new motion, we should probably do a roll call vote instead of just a yay or nay, since it's not just an amendment. Let's make sure.
Aaron Boltma.
Yes.
Catherine.
Yes.
Yvonne.
I'm gonna abstain.
Jason.
Yes.
Hayden.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, please go back to the bench for the love of God. I'm so sorry, Hayden.
No, I mean, look, the bench wasn't my brainchild. I'm just wanting to make sure that all things we had discussed in previous meetings are considered.
I appreciate that.
I mean, I appreciate the sensitivity around benches, and in fact, there's plenty of hostile architecture out in the world that makes benches kind of useless. So, and I understand like there can be situations where the bench becomes a nuisance more than a help. Yeah, but I guess I don't know how to articulate in language possible parameters to prevent the bench, from becoming a deal breaker.
Would it be possible to say something along the lines of a tenant meeting or a public meeting? If AATA is the one who would remove the bench, would they be able to host a special meeting about it? I don't know. I'm just making stuff up.
And you say have a bench unless the tenants majority say they don't want
it. ATA was an example.
Oh, I know.
I don't think they're involved in.
Oh, they wouldn't be. Okay, sorry. Thank you.
I don't think it's actually.
There's no bus stop.
Okay.
Yeah, the closest one is like across the street on the.
That was your. I'm sorry about that. Thank you.
So, but I think Jason's thought is a good, practical solution, which is, unless a majority of the tenants don't want it. I don't know. Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
if they
want to, there could be other, potentially other, like, I don't know, the city could say it's a nuisance or something. So, I mean, I think it's, yeah. So I think it's like, yeah, we'll put a bench in for as long as it's
okay. How about this?
Reasonable, or
we can say. I have a suggestion, maybe. Avalon agrees to install a bench unless a majority of tenants decide against it, or unless the bench is, incompatible with state or local law.
I think it wouldn't be there if it was incompatible.
No, I understand, but I'm trying to say if sometime down the road the city says get rid of this dang bench, they're gonna have to justify it somehow, and usually that's with their own laws.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
It is already into the agreement that with the agreement, no, the city shall not relax or eliminate any provision of the city code, ordinances, building code, or any other related code.
Yeah. Oh, so it's built in. Okay, well then we don't have to put that. So then maybe we just limit it to the majority of the tenants.
Yeah,
Remove
like
it.
In the spirit of it's almost 8, do you mind if we suggest some language? Which,
Sure.
as I said, we've tried not to do up till now.
You can suggest it, and
You can reject.
feel free
Well,
to
I
reject
always
it.
know you could reject it, but we just consciously tried to not direct the conversation. If you could just say, unless it proves to be a problem or a nuisance or something like that, because as Aubrey said, it's rarely the law that's prohibiting it.
I'm not
It's-
interested in like having to prove that it's a problem with the law. That's not what we
It's
want.
the neighbors are complaining.
And
They're-
it could be larger than that. There's also been residents who are in relationship with the folks that may be causing the majority of issues and therefore might not vote in favor of that determination. And yet others, it could, I mean, it's like, this isn't a highly statistical and probable circumstance, but
What would the language suggestion be?
I mean, if you're comfortable with a very, we'll put a bench, I don't know how we describe where, but in the front, that will remain unless it becomes a nuisance. And I would, period.
How do we define nuisance though? Because that's what I'm just wondering. Like
Who
that-
decides?
Like who decides it's a nuisance? Because I know that you mentioned law enforcement could decide. There's also city that could decide. There's the neighbors that could decide.
the installer of the bench might find it a nuisance and not want to install it.
Why are we hung up on a bench? Like, are we putting a bench in the front? Are people going to be coming in through the front, or are they coming in through the side?
But
No,
that
there's
front,
only
the
two
front
benches.
door that's towards the south is the main entrance.
And from what I can see from this floor plan, the only other entrances are through the community room
There is
and
a,
the staircase.
well, there's an entrance directly to the south, very close to the main entrance that goes through the stairwell.
Right. Oh, and the other stairwell in the back.
But we're not, I mean, we have to make it legal and also convenient,
Yep.
but the goal is to direct anyone coming into the building through the front door where that common space is.
And so we're angling for a bench for the residents or for the public. And I ask because is it a bench that we could have closer to the building, or is it a bench that's going to be out on the street? Why do we want a bench?
Well, if anyone wants to speak first, I will let y'all, so I don't step up, step back. But I think the bench was initially proposed as a way of having a spot outside of the apartment or the development that an individual, whether they're a tenant or a resident, can use. Because there really aren't a lot of benches available, at least in the areas, except near transportation centers or bus stops.
And even then,
They're
very rare.
They're very rare and they're very small or whatever. And so I think having that would be a community benefit to that extent. And I want to be weary of using language that allows this open interpretation of a nuisance, because I mean, anything could be considered a nuisance if you have a thought process. And so my thinking is, would it be possible to have some type of exception of like, some type of an exception with like obstructing, or if there was an obstruction of this bench, i.e., can you do i.e. or e.g. in laws or
Absolutely.
agreements? So like if there's an obstruction of this public bench, such as, name them, I don't know what these nuisance exceptions would be, violence, or loud, like very, very violent acts at this bench. Okay. Would we remove the whole bench for that, or is that more of a community issue that
Well, and that's why I thought Jason's threshold was very helpful. It's because it's, who decides? The majority of the tenants. And whatever reasons they have, they think it's ugly, fine, get rid of it. I mean, I think the concern about, the attractive nuisance that a bench presents primarily, I mean, to my mind, that concern should stop with the tenants. They're the people who live there. I don't know.
So do you want to make a motion for the tenants majority, or Jason?
A motion for tenants majority for a bench, where for a bench in which it has control of being there based off of the tenants majority rule.
Can you say that again? Into the microphone.
I motion for a bench to be installed in which the viability and ability to remain is held up to the majority rule of the tenants. So like if the tenants find it as a nuisance, then the majority of them can rule it. If they want it there or not, that's on them. But we want it there to be there initially, at least.
Is there a second?
Second.
A new motion has to be each of us individually, right?
Yes.
I think, well,
Roll call.
that seems to be the preference.
You get it?
Aaron? I'm gonna abstain.
Abstain means what again? You're just
You're
like
just
don't
not
vote.
voting,
You don't
yeah.
want to vote. Okay.
Either a yes nor a no.
Okay, gotcha. Oh, that's me. I will vote yes, please.
Yvonne.
I'm gonna abstain also.
I vote yes.
I vote yes. And you know what? If the bench is the poison pill that sinks this, I'll eat my hat.
Well, they can amend it if they don't
Right.
like it. So
still votes on it, so does that one.
yeah, so
Okay.
yeah, I think it'll be okay.
And
All right.
And I think, as you heard, we have a fair number of concerns bubbling around in our head, and our attorney will take a look at it. So
No, and I respect that. And if the attorneys, who are probably much older and wiser than I, come up with a more practical solution, the city council can amend it.
And speaking of amending, I know that the sheds was also a possible amendment because of capacity for storage. So with that in mind, instead of combining it with this one in the community center, could we just copy and paste the language a teeny bit with a provision of saying if space permits or storage permits or whatever?
Yeah, and I was trying to think of something to address Andrew's virtual concern.
What was it again? I'm sorry.
That because these are like historic sheds, there's the possibility that there's a possibility that the activities contemplated could run afoul of other ordinances and, blah, blah, blah.
What is the difference between Avalon using it for storage versus it being like a community tool shed or a bike rack? As it relates to zoning or permits, is there?
In terms of a historic district, it's about form and design, so that could have a big impact on what it is. If it's something that is going to be a meeting space, then it also has to have certain It also has to follow property maintenance code and have different things in terms of housing people. And then just going back before I have to get off now, but just going back to the bike racks, it's also going to depend, is the bike rack on the right of way? And then what does majority mean? What if everybody doesn't vote? Is it the majority of votes? So I mean, you're leaving it up to a lot of probability, and if you don't define what that is, then it's going to be an issue. But with that,
thank you.
go ahead. Yeah,
I was going to say is I'm open to amending the bench thing by saying a majority of voting tenants.
Yeah.
What does a majority of voting tenant mean?
When Avalon asks the tenants to decide what they want to do with the bench, those who decide to voice their opinion, yay or nay, the majority of that group means, then that group prevails. That majority group prevails.
And as someone who ran elections for 10 years, if you don't care, they're not going to vote. So you have one person voting because they care.
Yeah, I think it's.
I'd like to go back to this. Just because it exists doesn't mean that we have to use it as a community benefit. Like, I feel like we've negotiated a good list. I'm okay with letting it in terms of the bench and sheds. Just because
proportional though
doesn't mean we should.
I know, but we should, like, we have this opportunity, like this is the opportunity to do it. And there's a way that we could do it without getting it complicated. There's a way that we could do it without saying tenants majority and like, who's majority, who's voting? Okay. So could it be of the residents of the 22 units? I mean, I know that I liked the idea of going off of who's voting too, but Andrew brings up a point that if one person's voting, then that's one vote and that's one majority vote. So how,
100%.
Right. How would you be able to, I mean, I care more about the shed situation than I do the bench personally. So I would
remove the bench entirely.
No, I think it's important. I don't want to distract from that. I do think it's important. But I am more focused on like the shed specifically, like Andrew bringing up that the meeting space would require extra permits for like human habitat. That's a lot. But I think having it be a bike rack per se, or some type of community allocated initiative, like leaving it at that if space permitted. Like, I don't think it has to be very complicated. What?
Why don't we just amend it to say Avalon will install a bench in the front of the property, period, and then they install it and it lives there until it doesn't live there, and
that is only limited to installation, not removal.
Yeah. So exactly. So if you just left it at that without anything behind it, I think that
love it.
Sounds great.
Would
Evan, you're a hero.
Would just work, right? I mean,
yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Jason, you agree that
amendment?
I motion for that amendment.
I second.
Well, Hayden seconded it.
Oh yeah, Hayden, you seconded it. Yeah.
And everybody, I can see by the nods and the agreement.
Everyone's in favor of that.
No abstaining of that one.
I wouldn't even abstain from
that. Okay, going to the sheds now, so we can
go. I changed your vote to yes.
Well, given the fact that the use of the sheds has to be consistent with local law, and by definition, by the already drafted language, I think I have already avoided that concern. Because if the historical district committee says you can't use it for bike racks, then that's the end of the story.
They said that it's only form and design, though.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just saying. Yeah. I'm just saying. For some reason, if they somehow find the power to do that within their mandate, right, then it's against the law for there to be a bike rack. So
okay.
Whatever. I mean, I think the legal aspect is already contemplated by the terms of the agreement already. So if the concern is about space, then I think we should include that.
How would you suggest wording
Oh,
that?
gosh. Avalon will collaborate with community partners to offer appropriate.
And are you trying to amend that one again
I'm
then?
trying to add another one.
Okay, because I was gonna say you could say offer to facilitate or foster or enhance collaborative or community initiatives. That way it doesn't necessarily leave the sole responsibility on them, and also it allows maybe opportunity for others, but still shows that the shed will be used for, if permitted spacing, will be permitted for use for community collaborative initiatives. Something like that, you think? Or
well, it seems more expensive if we're only contemplating a bike rack, but it seems to include a tool lending library.
any suggestions?
Nothing compared to a bench, like maybe fruit trees.
No.
I mean, if we, I mean, maybe we be specific. I don't know. Like, if sufficient space is available, Avalon will utilize the sheds for communal purposes. Something like that simple.
Yeah.
Well, sheds will be utilized for community benefits as space permits. Something like that.
Yeah. I think along the like the historic sheds will be utilized, space permitting, as a multi-purpose community-based benefit initiative. Oh fuck. What did you I am so sorry, everyone.
Okay, I'm sure it's not the first time that's happened ever, so I think you're good.
Oh, that just slipped out. I apologize.
Now you're really in city politics.
I know. And the first meeting I said, I gotta use the bathroom on the mic too.
Yeah, that's what happens
Still
when
on the
it
microphone.
passes
I catch
eight.
Michael as he's finishing conversation.
Yeah, okay. So excuse me, Aaron, could you please say
No idea what I said.
She said as a community benefit.
Yeah, like the
community initiative, community benefit, enhancing public support, something like that.
I just think keeping it simple, like community benefit, to let that mean what it's gonna mean, and as space allows or as space permits, so then that gives space to.
Is there value in adding that at this? I mean,
No.
You guys are the committee. I don't mean to. I don't
Adding
mean
which?
to question it. I just feel like that. Like we're grasping for it,
Yeah.
and so it feels like it's just adding. We're just going like it's 8:15. We have to just put it all in.
I think that, like, I don't know.
Is it?
To me, it's not. Like, I trust that Avalon is going to use the sheds the way that they need to use the sheds. So if that ends up being for storage, either for Avalon, for maintenance staff, or if that's for for tenants storage, I don't know if that's a thing, but or if it ends up to be bike racks or some other kind of community, thing that maybe there's something that tenants want to do with it. I mean, I think
I personally am more attached to this because I did bring it up, but it's also because, I mean, I remember y'all mentioning that building or refinishing or fixing up this old historic shed, and not like you mentioned earlier, like the money that will go into it, not really knowing how to utilize it being an issue. Like, I feel like that's why it matters, is that this agreement could guarantee that if it's not utilized for storage because you don't need it for storage, the least that it could be utilized for is a community initiative of some sort. Rather that be bike racks or tool shed sharing or whatever. Leave that up for the tenant interpretation. majority of who votes, I guess. But that's what I was thinking. And I know I'm not rushing to get out of here personally, but I know that others are. So I'm outnumbered most likely, but I would like to see that as a benefit.
I have some proposed language if you want.
Yay, yes.
Okay.
Is it Chat GPT or you?
No, it was me.
Oh,
We're just wordsmithing. Avalon will maximize use of historic outbuildings for community benefit as space permits.
Yes.
Rock and roll.
Perfect.
I
make a motion to put that in the agreement. What Evan just
second that.
What he said.
Let's do it.
Again, who motioned? Cat? Who second?
I did.
Okay. Katie's gonna take a quick roll call with this one.
Can you read it again, please?
Yeah. Avalon will maximize use of historic outbuildings for community benefit as space permits.
Glorious.
Are we doing a roll call vote? I'm sorry.
Yep.
Okay.
Aaron?
Yes.
Kat?
Yes.
Yvonne?
Yeah, I'm abstaining on that one too.
Jason?
Yes.
Oh God. No.
Oh, only 5 of us.
It's my note-taking
Okay.
skills and abilities. Sorry. Hayden.
Yes.
Great. That's everybody, right? All right. Motion passes.
And now for second public comment.
Are we? Is everyone feel? Are we good on the?
Actually, we have a couple other.
Yeah, we have a couple just logistical things that we have to go over with you before you leave.
That's
So as Andrew mentioned, there needs to be a presentation from this group once we determine what council meeting agenda it's going to be on after attorneys from both ends are able to review, etc. So we need to identify tonight who from the group wants to speak at that meeting. So we'll be able to work with that person on making sure they have the content, like the actual agreement once it's complete.
Does it have to be one person? Can it be?
No, typically it's been 2. I think from the past it can be more than 1, but I think 2 people presented it for the past 2 CBEAs.
When is it?
We don't know yet. Probably beginning of October.
I'm sure it will be
Sometime in October.
date helped determined by some of this committee as well as.
Yeah. It'll be a date that obviously you're available to present. We wouldn't just pick a date that you can't make it.
Did you say, is it presenting to city council or is it presenting to
The world.
At a council meeting, to council.
at a council? Okay.
Mhm.
Which are public. I personally would love to be one of those 2 people, but
Okay.
I don't know if others would love to join or have opposing feelings to that. I just want to put that out there.
I'll be your second on that. Well, I'll do it also if no one else wants to. Y'all are y'all looking down at the ground like. Yeah, I can.
So Kat and Jason.
Great.
Could there be 3? Is there a third person who wants to join us? Anyone? Hayden, I saw our eyes lock.
Let's do it.
Oh,
All right.
so
So three people.
Okay.
it's a 3 people. There you
John
go.
Pod. After 8 o'clock, it is the witching hour.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just,
Go ahead, Michael.
I have a process question. If I understand essentially what's happened is this agreement is going to be presented to council as amended tonight as the recommendation of this committee to council. So
Minus some lawyer looking,
well,
right?
I-
That's what he said.
well, right. Part of my question was this committee having voted on it, if comments from our attorney should go to staff at this point,
Yeah.
and any future changes would be made by council when it hits the table.
Yeah, your attorney will work with staff and our city attorney.
Right. So attorneys would make changes.
Okay, I just wanted to understand the process and who we're responding.
So if it
Based
doesn't
on
look
feedback.
exactly like you proposed, we'll be able to likely provide a reason why, because it was taken out due
I
to
think that also clarifies your point, and I apologize.
Review.
Because again, this is Evan and I's first community benefits process. And so any confusion has been based on the fact that it's just the first time we've done it and
Yeah.
we've had less of Andrew because of all the other things happening in the city right now. So anyhow, I think that that's why when I think you had mentioned, Kat, at one point that like some of the agreements have looked differently than what the committee expected, and then that's literally because of the next part of the process, which is the attorneys doing what they do.
The legal
No
jargon.
matter what the motion was to include in it, we'll conclude that language when I send it over to Mr. Barr's office tomorrow morning.
Mhm.
However, based on whether that's legal or based on whether or not both parties can agree or not, will
Is out of our hands at this point.
Yeah, and then it will go right and then go.
recommendations that
Right.
Yep, to go to them for review, and then those after that go to council, and then council, as you know, right, can make changes to and then has the final approval say.
To clarify that's why it looks like that's the difference.
Would the meeting presenting to council be after they approve it with the changes?
No, it would be the meeting like presenting it to
Council.
council for like
Okay.
the first
So it would be
time
after
reviewing.
the attorneys get done.
Yeah, after
Okay.
they
Gotcha.
review it,
Okay.
we would.
It would be the agreed upon document.
Yeah, the document that basically the council would be voting on is
Okay.
the one you'd be presenting.
Okay, gotcha.
Basically. Do we need to cover anything else logistically tonight? I don't think.
No,
besides
but
those
that's
things.
logistics.
I think that's logistics enough.
We moved the recap to the end and it's essentially next step. So yes, public comment.
Yes. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make comment? Seeing none. Anyone on Zoom?
Is there anyone on Zoom that would
difference
like
a
to
week
make
makes.
public comment? Please raise your hand now.
I think we know Andrew left.
Andrew did leave.
We still have a couple other attendees though.
Yes. I do not see any raised hands.
Okay.
And so a motion
Meeting
to adjourn.
is adjourned at 8:23. Thank you all
Aye.
for your work on this.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Nice to meet everybody.
Yeah.
Although now that I've
Let us-
then I guess I'm gonna see everyone again.
Next Wednesday here, right?
Can we
Well,
exchange?
we'll see.
Yeah, you can. And then keep an eye out for Hayden, Jason, and Kat.